Hello, welcome to the demo of my tool Relativity portfolio. It is a tool to automate your stock market research. So, say you are an investor, you invest in the stock market and you are a good investor. So, a good investor always follows a set of rules and guidelines, essentially their own framework. Now, with the rise of agentic tools, research or the capacity to do research isn't really a moat. The real moat is your ideation, which means how well can you actually define a framework. Now, what if you could automate the research part if you have a well defined framework? That is exactly what I have here, and I basically call it a profile. So, let's look at what a profile looks like. The profile basically captures your investing style. Here you can set some basic configurations like the market, which asset class you want, the capitalization, and some sectors. Second is your investor persona. This is basically your philosophy and your mindset, how you define yourself, your values as an investor. Third is the asset evaluation. This is the core part of how you evaluate the stock. I've divided it into qualitative and quantitative aspects. Qualitative basically means things that you can't really, evaluate by traditional metrics or ratios. For example, product or business innovation. This is something for which you have to go through a company's annual reports, con call transcripts, and investor presentations. So you just define that parameter, you give it a weight, and you give some details about it. The second sub part of asset evaluation is the quantitative evaluation. This is what we are most familiar with. We choose a category of metrics, we choose the metric, we give it a weightage, which means how important we believe that particular metric is, greater than or lesser than, and the value. The similar thing, but for macro evaluation. We can divide it into qualitative and quantitative aspects. Now, once we have defined a profile, and I basically defined this one, created this one using ChatGPT and famous investors principles William O'Neill and his CAN-SLIM framework, basically, just for an example. So once this profile is created, let's go to new analysis, choose the market, choose a stock, the profile you defined, and the model you want. This is the model which will be used by our agent in the backend to read all of those documents, fetch all of the data, and make decisions on the qualitative parameters. After this, just hit on start analysis. This could take about 1 to 2 minutes. So I already have one analysis run here. This is what the result looks like. So there's a bunch of stuff. First, we have an overview of the quantitative and the qualitative scoring. In this table here, we can see the criteria that we set, the actual value, and the score. A very interesting part about this quantitative scoring is that it does not work on a binary 0 or 1 or pass or fail sort of scoring. So for example, for this first metric, we set a criteria that it has to be greater than or equal to 20. The actual value was around 19.2, which is not very far away from our criteria threshold. If we were to manually check this, we would basically sort of accept this. And so since it is not so far away, we still get a high score. But for example, this one here, operating margin, we wanted it to be at least 15, but the actual value turned out to be 11. So it is significantly far from our threshold, hence a low score. Second is the qualitative scoring. This is done entirely by the language model, the agent, right? We can view it in detail here. You can see the exact justification by the model for the score it gave. We can also see the tool calls it made, which means what exactly is the data the model is basing its analysis on. So, for example, product or business innovation, we can see that the agent basically read the latest presentation, which makes sense, right? Because in the presentations, the company would sort of define their future vision, their products, innovations, acquisitions, etc. Now, in this particular case, the model thought that this deserved a score of 0, but that really depends on the model and the agent and how well you define the profile, right? So, we take these scores, we perform a weighted average, which gives us the qualitative score. We do the same weighted average for quantitative score as well. We get that here, and we do a simple average to get a fit score. As the term fit score suggests, it basically is an alignment score about how well does the stock align with your investing framework, which is the profile. So that's the core of it. A few other interesting parts is the data section. If you want to see what exactly is the data that is being used to perform this analysis, you can view it here. And the good part is there are no APIs. Everything is being fetched directly from the NSE, the National Stock Exchange. If you want to pull the latest data, you can click it here. If you want to see the financial ratios, the metrics, how it's being calculated, you can view them here. And lastly, for all of this to work, you need to provide some API keys. So for the agents you want to use, select a provider for the model, pass in your API key and set it. And for the web search, I am using Tavily API key here. If you don't know, Tavily is a famous web search API provider. You can just search it on Google, Tavily API key, just log in and it will give you the key. Just enter it here and save. And the best part is everything is being stored locally in your browser, so it's basically everything is local. So yeah, that's how it is. We have the evaluation here, your own investor profile, and the analysis. Thank you.